Hi, welcome back to Daily Movie Recaps. A new movie recapped every single day. Today, we'll recap a classic Christmas tale, originally written by Charles Dickens. Spoilers up ahead, so watch out. Enjoy the recap. The film begins in 19th century's London. It's Christmas Eve, and people are busy with their daily chores on the London streets. Charles Dickens, assisted by Rizzo the Rat, are selling Christmas apples and act as narrator. Dickens narrates the story of a shrewd moneylender, named Ebenezer Scrooge. We see Ebenezer Scrooge pass through the street, and Muppet people and animals start singing the Scrooge song, where they describe with their lyrics how cruel, heartless, angry and mean Scrooge is, who loves only money and has no friends. When Scrooge arrives at his office door, people keep singing behind him, "Scrooge is getting worse." He suddenly looks back, and the whole crowd disperses. Scrooge enters the office. Dickens and Rizzo peek inside the office and continue their narration. Scrooge meets Mr. Applegate in the office, and his loyal employee, Bob Cratchit, tells him that Mr. Applegate wanted to speak to him for his mortgage. Mr. Applegate pleads that he falls behind in the payments, due to Christmas and his daughter's illness. Scrooge throws Applegate out of the office, and orders Cratchit to deal with the next day's eviction notice. At that moment, Scrooge's only living relative, his nephew Fred, arrives at the office. He wishes Scrooge a Merry Christmas, and invites his uncle to Christmas dinner. Dickens and Rizzo also enter the office. Scrooge and Fred get into an argument, as Scrooge is not that fond of Christmas celebrations. Two gentlemen enter Scrooge's office, collecting money in the spirit of the season, to provide a Christmas dinner for the poor. Scrooge rebuffs his nephew's Christmas dinner invitation and, after his departure, shocks the charity collectors with his statement that the poor are looked after by prisons and workhouses, and their deaths will decrease the surplus population. Mr. Scrooge sees a Muppet rabbit singing for him, asking for a penny, but he throws a bouquet on him. Later in the evening, Cratchit, with other employees, asks for Christmas Day off and fortunately Scrooge agrees. Cratchit thanks Scrooge for this and Scrooge leaves. Cratchit and other staff start closing the office and sing One More Sleep Till Christmas. We see the Rat staff blinding the windows, closing the books and sweeping the floors, and after that Cratchit and others close the office and leave for their homes singing in joy. They see penguins skating in the streets. In the next scene, we see Dickens and Rizzo in a dark street, on a horse carriage continuing the narration. Dickens tells us that Scrooge lives in a chamber that once belonged to his old business partners, Jacob Marley and Robert Marley, who are dead now. Scrooge approaches his front door, and suddenly the doorknocker turns into Jacob Marley's head. Jacob Marley's ghost groans loudly, startling Scrooge. Dickens and Rizzo fall off the horse carriage. Scrooge looks at the doorknocker again, which has turned back to normal. Scrooge assumes it was all an illusion. Dickens and Rizzo try to enter, but Scrooge shuts the door. Scrooge makes his way up the stairs carefully. He lights the lamps in his room. His dressing gown startles him, which he beats with a hearth poke. Later, while eating his dinner, he hears the sound of wood creaking, and the bell hanging on the wall automatically starts ringing loudly. The fire in the fireplace gets extinguished, and Scrooge gets very scared. He hears chains clinking down the stairs. Suddenly, Scrooge finds himself face to face with mean-spirited spirits of Jacob and Robert Marley. They make fun of Scrooge, and he pretends not to recognize them. Both ghosts sing Marley and Marley, where they describe how black-hearted they were their entire life, took advantage of the poor, and have been condemned to shackles in the afterlife, as payment for their horrible deeds. They chain Scrooge, and warn him that he too will be shackles in his afterlife, because of his crimes. He will share the same fate, only worse, if he does not change his ways, and foretell the arrival of 3 spirits throughout the night. When the bell tolls 1, the first spirit will visit. After this, both spirits vanish into darkness. Scrooge goes to bed. Dickens and Rizzo try to break into the house. When Rizzo climbs the gate and enters, he finds that he could have entered through the bars as well. Dickens calls him an idiot. They climb on the tree near the window. Scrooge has fallen into deep sleep. It's 1 o'clock at night. The bell tolls. A very bright light enters his room. Scrooge wakes up. He removes the window curtains and is visited by the ghost of Christmas past. The spirit says that he has come for his welfare and asks him to hold its hand to fly along. Dickens and Rizzo hang from the rope with Scrooge. Scrooge sees the light ahead and asks Spirit about it. The spirit tells them this is his past. They arrive in Ebenezer Scrooge's childhood. It was Christmas Eve. A cat chases Rizzo as they land. Scrooge recognizes his old school from when he was a kid. He sees his friends, Henry and Edmund, and tries to call them, but the spirit tells him that these are just shadows of his past, and they can't see or hear him. Scrooge enters his classroom, and finds everything familiar. He sees a boy there, and realizes it is him. He refuses to go for Christmas with his friends, and continues with his work. Scrooge sees his childhood passing in a moment. He sees teen Ebenezer getting life lessons, from his headmaster. Headmaster tells him, that he has been apprenticed to a fine company in London. A moment later, Scrooge finds himself standing on a street, looking at a building. Scrooge tells Spirit that this is Fozziwig's old rubber chicken factory, and his first job was there. Once again, it is Christmas Eve. Dickens continues the narration, and while lighting the street light, Rizzo's tail catches fire, causing Dickens to throw him into the cold water. Ebenezer and Spirit see employer Fozziwig at the gate. They find everyone celebrating the Christmas party inside. Dickens brings frozen Rizzo inside, and breaks him out of the ice. Fozziwig tries to get everyone's attention, but the Marley brothers make fun of him. Fozziwig starts his speech, but the Marley brothers interrupt him this time too. After this, everyone starts dancing at the behest of Fozziwig's mother. After a while, young Scrooge arrives and asks Mr. Fozziwig about the party expenses, but Fozziwig tells him to stop working, and enjoy himself. Mr. Fozziwig introduces a woman, named Belle, to young Scrooge. The next moment, the spirit takes Mr. Scrooge to another place. They see young Ebenezer, and Belle, sitting alone. Belle asks young Scrooge for their marriage, but he protests. Scrooge says, he would marry her as soon as he feels he has enough money to provide for them. Belle knows he will most likely never have that, given his birthing obsession with money. After this, Belle leaves, leaving young Scrooge alone. The older Scrooge gets emotional, and stops the spirit from showing any more. He sits down and starts crying, and in a moment, he finds himself back his bed chamber. It's 2 o'clock, and Scrooge waits for the next ghost. He sees the ghost of Christmas present, a large, festive spirit, with a booming voice. He reveals that he has 1,800 brothers like him. Scrooge jokes about their grocery bills. The ghost shrinks to normal size. The ghost tells how wonderful everything seems on Christmas Day, but Scrooge says that he has never understood about Christmas. The ghost opens the window, causing Dickens and Rizzo to fall down, and says he will take him out into the world. Mr. Scrooge and the ghost appear in the city streets, on Christmas morning. The ghost sings, "It feels like Christmas." He sees everyone marrying, rejoicing, dancing, making snowmen and giving gifts. Mr. Scrooge himself starts dancing with the spirit. He requests the ghost to show his friends and family. The next moment, he finds himself at his nephew Fred, and his wife Clara's, having Christmas with friends. Rizzo accidentally eats wax fruits. Fred plays the game yes or no, with everyone. He tells everyone to guess something. His wife guesses, that it is an unwanted creature, but not a rat, a leech, or a cockroach. She says, it is Ebenezer Scrooge. Everyone starts laughing after hearing this. Scrooge is deeply saddened to hear this, and Ghost tells him, that he still has much to see. Mr. Scrooge wishes to see no more. Ghost takes him to an odd corner of the town. He shows him Mr. Bob Cratchit's house. They peek into his house. Dickens and Rizzo try to barge through the chimney. Mrs. Emmy Cratchit is cooking goose inside. She tells her son Peter, to turn the spit to roast goose. Rizzo the Rat falls through the chimney, on the goose, and burns his feet. Mrs. Cratchit's twin daughters, Bettina and Belinda, stop her from eating chestnuts. The ghost and Mr. Scrooge sees Mr. Cratchit, and Tiny Tim, arrive home singing Christmas scat and joy. They enter the house, and Dickens enters the house too. Peter, and both daughters, run to Cratchit in joy, and hug him. Mr. Cratchit wishes them Merry Christmas. He hugs his wife, and wishes her too. They all start having their dinner. Mr. Scrooge regrets paying Bob such a small amount. Scrooge enters the house. He sees Mr. Cratchit raising his glass for Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast, but his family opposes it. His wife calls him stingy and wicked, but also raises her glass for Mr. Scrooge's health. The family sings the Bless Us All song. Mr. Scrooge asks the ghost whether Tiny Tim will die or not, and the spirit tells him he is going to die. The Cratchit family vanishes into the darkness. The next moment, Mr. Scrooge finds the ghost of Present's hair white. He asks him whether he has grown old. The ghost laughs, and says yes. The bell tolls once again, and Mr. Ebenezer asks the spirit not to leave. The spirit tells him, that he has yet to meet the spirit of Christmas yet to come. After this, the ghost vanishes. Mr. Ebenezer finds himself in a graveyard. He suddenly sees a large cloud of smoke. Finally, Scrooge meets the ghost of Christmas yet to come, a silent entity. He gets scared, as it is a large spirit with a gown, and no face. He says he is prepared to follow him, and learn with a thankful heart, The spirit leads him through to the city streets, where it is raining, and he is surprised that he is not getting wet in the rain. The ghost of Christmas yet to come points towards some people. They are jokingly talking about Mr. Scrooge's death, and wondering what he would have done with his money before his death. They say they would not like to go to his funeral, unless free lunch is provided. He also sees some people trading for his things after his death, and he is shocked to learn that it was all his stuff. Now, the spirit takes him to Bob Cratchit's house. He thanks the spirit, and wonders why there is so much silence. The spirit points towards the house, and Mr. Scrooge peeks inside through the door. He sees Mrs. Cratchit sobbing. Mr. Cratchit arrives home. Everyone hugs Mr. Cratchit, but Tiny Tim is not there. They leave a chair empty for Tim, and everyone is sad at the dinner table, but Mr. Cratchit encourages everyone, that although they will never forget Tim, life is made up of meetings and partings. In the next scene, we see the spirit and Mr. Scrooge return to the graveyard again. He asks the spirit fearfully, about the wretched man whose death brought happiness to others. The spirit silently points towards a grave. He cries, and asks again whether these events are going to happen in real life, and whether they can be changed. The spirit again points towards the headstone. He slowly steps towards the grave. He cleans the snow dust and sees his name, Ebenezer Scrooge. He begs spirit for his life, by saying that he will honor Christmas, and will follow all the lessons taught by the spirits. He falls at the feet of the spirit, and starts begging. The next moment, Mr. Ebenezer finds himself in his bed, in his room. Mr. Dickens and Rizzo are still narrating on the window. He jumps up with joy and prepares to go out. He thanks God, and the Marley brothers. He opens the window, causing Rizzo and Dickens to fall down, and sees the tiny Muppet Rabbit again. He gives him 5 shillings, to buy himself the prize turkey from the poultry shop nearby. Rabbit happily runs away from there. Mr. Scrooge plans to visit Mr. Cratchit's house. A few moments later, dressed in his finest, Scrooge appears on the streets of the city. He wishes each and everyone Merry Christmas, including narrators Dickens and Rizzo. He meets both gentlemen again, who asked for donations the previous day, and get scared of him. Mr. Scrooge whispers the donation amount to one of them. He is shocked to hear this amount, and the other man gifts his scarf to Scrooge. He thanks them, and wishes them a Merry Christmas. The little Muppet Rabbit comes with the prize turkey, and Mr. Scrooge tells him to follow. He sings the song Thankful Heart with everyone. He buys gifts from the shop. He places gifts on his employees' tables in the office. He goes to Mr. Fred and his wife Clara's home, and give them gifts too. He passes through the city streets and gives everyone gifts. Finally, he reaches at Mr. Cratchit's house, and knocks on the door. Mr. Cratchit opens the door. Mr. Scrooge pretends to be rude, and asks him why he was not at work that morning. He says that he himself gave him the day off. Mrs. Cratchit intervenes, and starts saying bad things to Mr. Scrooge. Mr. Scrooge interrupts her, saying that he is going to raise his salary, and pay the mortgage on his house. Mr. and Mrs. Cratchit get shocked, and welcome him into the house. Mr. Scrooge invites their family to turkey dinner on Christmas Day. Everyone enters the house, and gives Mr. Cratchit prize turkey. Here, Mr. Dickens explains that Tiny Tim is still fine, and Mr. Scrooge became a good man. We see Mr. Scrooge, the Cratchit family, and others having turkey dinner in the house. He puts Tiny Tim on the table. Tim gives blessings to all, and Mr. Scrooge also gives blessings to everyone. Mr. Scrooge, and others, and everyone on the street sings the song, When Love Is Found. We see the city from above, and we hear Rizzo praising the story, and Mr. Dickens suggests he should read the book. We hear Santa Claus laughing, and wishing us Merry Christmas, and the film ends with the song, It Feels Like Christmas. Please leave a comment or like, and don't forget to subscribe, and turn on your notifications for a new movie recap, every day. This way you'll never miss a movie recap again. Thanks for watching and see you at the next movie recap.